The mimosas were flowing at the country club brunch, and my sister Sarah was practically glowing as Dad slid the keys across the white tablecloth. They were the keys to the Ocean View Beach House, 3 bedrooms, direct beach access, $1 million views. Our family's pride and joy for 2 generations. Congratulations, sweetheart, Mom said, dabbing her eyes. You've worked so hard for that MBA. You deserve this. Sarah picked up the keys like they were made of gold. I can't believe it. The beach house all mine. Well, technically it'll still be in the family trust, Dad clarified. But you'll have full use of it. Exclusive rights. We're transferring primary occupancy to you. My younger brother Chris raised his coffee cup to Sarah and her fancy new business degree and her fancy new beach house. Everyone at the table cheered. Aunts, uncles, cousins, all gathered to celebrate Sarah's graduation and her spectacular gift. I lifted my water glass politely and took a small sip. What about you, Natalie? Aunt Diane asked, turning to me. What did you get when you graduated? The table went quiet for a moment. A nice dinner, Mom said quickly. And we were very proud. That was 7 years ago. I'd graduated from state school with a finance degree. No fanfare, no beach house, just a dinner at Olive Garden and a card with $500 inside. Meanwhile, Sarah had gotten her MBA from a prestigious private university, funded entirely by our parents, and was now getting a multi-million-dollar property. It's different situations, Dad explained, his tone suggesting this topic was settled. Sarah's going into the family business. She'll need a place to entertain clients, host networking events. The beach house is a strategic asset for her career development. Plus, Sarah added, already scrolling through Pinterest on her phone, I'm thinking of the renovation potential. Updated kitchen, maybe expand the deck. Definitely new furniture. I want to host my first client dinner party by next month. Whatever you need, honey, Mom said. We've set aside a renovation budget. The house should reflect your taste. I checked my phone under the table. 11:47 a.m. 13 minutes until the trust activated. 13 minutes until everything changed. My phone had been buzzing all morning with notifications from my attorney, my financial advisor, and the trust administrator. Everything was proceeding on schedule. Years of careful planning were about to pay off in a way my family couldn't begin to imagine. Natalie, you look distracted, Sarah said, her voice carrying that edge of superiority she'd perfected over the years. I know this might be hard for you, seeing me get something so nice, but you have to understand I worked really hard for my degree. Not everyone puts in that kind of effort. I'd worked full-time while getting my degree, graduated summa cum laude, and built a career in investment management that had made me extremely comfortable. But Sarah had gone to school full-time on our parents' dime, gotten mediocre grades, and now had a junior position at Dad's real estate development company, a job she'd been handed, not earned. I'm happy for you, I said, meaning it. Let her have the beach house. In 13 minutes, she'd understand just how happy I really was. We should talk about the moving party, Mom said, pulling out her planner. I'm thinking next Saturday. We can all help Sarah move her things and maybe have a barbecue on the beach. I've already hired movers, Sarah said. Professional ones. I'm not having family hauling my designer furniture around, but yes to the barbecue. I want everyone to see the place once I've arranged it properly. Chris nudged me. You'll come to the moving party, right? Wouldn't miss it, I said. Dad's phone rang. He glanced at it, frowned, and excused himself from the table. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see him pacing on the terrace, his expression growing increasingly confused. Mom noticed, too. I wonder what that's about. He looks concerned. My phone buzzed. A text from my attorney. Trust activation complete. All properties now under your full control. Your grandparents would be very proud. 11:59 a.m. Right on schedule. Dad returned to the table, his face pale. I need to speak with Natalie. Privately. The table went silent. Is everything okay? Mom asked. I'm not sure, Dad said, his voice tight. Natalie. We stepped away to a quiet corner of the dining room. Dad pulled out his phone, showing me an email from the Family Trust Administrator. I just received notice that the Coastal Properties Trust has been activated and transferred to a primary beneficiary. The email says you're now the sole controller of the trust. That can't be right. It's right, I said calmly. But that trust was set up by your grandparents. It holds the beach house, the mountain cabin, the investment properties downtown. It's worth, he did the mental math, at least $15 million. How could you possibly control it? Grandma and Grandpa set very specific conditions in their trust documents. The trust activates and transfers to full control when the eldest grandchild turns 30. I turned 30 last month. But they died when you were 15. How would you even know about these conditions? Grandma told me right before she passed. She was very clear about what would happen and what my responsibilities would be. She also gave me letters, one to open when I turned 18, another at 25, and the final one at 30. Each letter had instructions and guidance. Dad's hand was shaking slightly. The beach house is part of the Coastal Properties Trust, which I now control. You can't just take it from Sarah. We promised her. You promised her something that wasn't yours to promise. The trust has always had stipulations. Nobody bothered to read the fine print. Grandpa was very specific. The properties were to be managed by the eldest grandchild of sound judgment and financial responsibility, activated on their 30th birthday. This is insane, Dad said. You're going to ruin Sarah's graduation gift over some technicality. It's not a technicality. It's the explicit intention of the people who built this wealth. Grandma and Grandpa worked their entire lives to acquire these properties. They wanted them protected, managed well, and passed down through the family according to their wishes, not your impulses. We returned to the table. Everyone was watching now, sensing drama. What's going on? Mom asked. Dad sat down heavily. There's been a complication with the beach house. What kind of complication? Sarah's voice was sharp. I pulled out my phone and opened the trust documents. The beach house, along with the mountain cabin and 6 commercial properties downtown, are all part of the Coastal Properties Trust established by our grandparents. As of noon today, I became the sole trustee and primary beneficiary with full control over all trust assets. The silence was deafening. Sarah laughed, but it sounded forced. That's ridiculous. The beach house has always been family property. It's been trust property, I corrected. Managed by a corporate trustee until specific conditions were met. Those conditions were met today. Mom was scrolling through something on her phone now. I'm looking at the original trust documents. How did I never see these before? Because Dad managed the family finances and didn't read the details, I said simply. The trust was set up to prevent exactly this kind of situation, impulsive gifts of valuable assets without considering long-term family wealth preservation. You're saying Grandma and Grandpa didn't trust me? Dad's face was red. I'm saying they loved you but knew you had different values around money. They wanted to ensure the properties would be managed by someone with financial discipline and long-term vision. Sarah slammed her hand on the table. You can't do this. Dad promised me that house. Dad promised you something he didn't have the authority to promise. The trust has always specified that I would take control at 30. I didn't create these rules. Grandma and Grandpa did. Then change the rules, Sarah demanded. You control the trust now, right? So just give me the house. The trust has specific restrictions on how properties can be distributed. I can't just give them away. They have to be managed for the benefit of all current and future family members. That's lawyer talk for, I'm keeping everything for myself, Sarah spat. Actually, it's lawyer talk for these properties will be maintained, rented at fair market rates, and the income will be invested for long-term family benefit, which is exactly what Grandma and Grandpa wanted. Mom was reading the trust documents on her phone, her face growing paler. The beach house generates $8,000 a month in rental income when it's not being used by family. The commercial properties bring in over $40,000 monthly. This trust has been generating significant income for years. Where's that money been going? Chris asked. Back into the trust for property maintenance, taxes, and investment growth, I said. The current trust value is approximately $18 million, up from the original $12 million when Grandma and Grandpa died. Good management and appreciation. $18 million, Sarah whispered. And you're keeping all of it. I'm managing all of it. There's a difference. The trust documents specify that family members can use the properties under fair terms. You could still use the beach house, Sarah. You just need to book it through the property manager and pay the standard family rate. Pay to use my own family's beach house? Pay a subsidized rate to use a trust property, yes, just like everyone else in the family. Dad found his voice again. This is going to tear the family apart. No, Dad. Your promise to Sarah without checking whether you had the authority was going to tear the family apart. I'm just enforcing the rules that have existed for 15 years. Aunt Diane spoke up from the end of the table. I remember when Mom and Dad set up that trust. They were very specific about wanting the properties protected. Dad always said he didn't want his hard work squandered on impulse decisions. Exactly, I said. Grandpa built a commercial real estate portfolio through decades of careful investment. He didn't want it broken up or handed out piecemeal. So what? You're just going to lord this over all of us. Sarah's voice was venomous. Sit on your little throne of properties while the rest of us beg for scraps? I'm going to manage the properties responsibly, maintain them well, ensure they continue appreciating in value, and make them available to family members under fair and sustainable terms. That's my job as trustee. You could have told us, Mom said quietly. You could have mentioned this before we promised Sarah the house. I sent Dad an email 3 months ago when the trust administrator notified me of the upcoming activation. I outlined the timeline and suggested he review the original trust documents before making any promises about trust properties. He never responded. Dad's face went from red to white. I thought that email was spam. Some kind of phishing scam. You thought an email from Grandma and Grandpa's estate attorney was a phishing scam? I get a lot of emails. I didn't read it carefully. That's not my fault, I said. I did my due diligence. You didn't do yours. Sarah stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. I can't believe this. My graduation day, and you're ruining it with your power trip. Sarah, I'm not trying to ruin anything. I'm just clarifying what's actually happening versus what you were told would happen. Same thing. She grabbed her purse. You know what? Keep your stupid beach house. I don't need it. I don't need any of this family. She stormed out, and after a moment, Mom followed her. The remaining family members sat in uncomfortable silence. Chris cleared his throat. So, can I still use the mountain cabin for my ski trips? Yes. Book through the property manager. Pay the family rate. Follow the house rules. Same as always. There were always house rules, I added. Most people just ignored them because there was no enforcement. That's changing. Dad was staring at his untouched plate. Your grandmother would be ashamed of you. Actually, Grandma's final letter to me specifically said she knew this would be difficult, but that she trusted me to stay strong and honor her wishes even when family members tried to make me feel guilty. She said you'd probably say she'd be ashamed of me. Her exact words were, "Your father will try to make you feel bad. Don't let him. You're doing the right thing." She said she knew you very well, Dad. Aunt Diane smiled slightly. That sounds exactly like Mom. She loved you, David, but she also knew your weaknesses. This is insane, Dad said. $15 million. $18 million, I corrected. $18 million, and you're going to manage it all yourself? I have a property manager, an accountant, an attorney, and a financial advisor. I'm not doing this alone, but yes, I'm overseeing everything. It's my responsibility now. And what do you get out of this? What's your compensation for being the big important trustee? The trust documents allow the trustee to draw a reasonable management fee, 3% of annual gross income. That's about $43,000 a year currently. Plus, I can use the properties under the same family terms as everyone else. $43,000 to manage $18 million in assets, Chris whistled. That's actually pretty modest. Grandma and Grandpa wanted the trustee to view this as a family service, not a cash grab. The real benefit is knowing these properties will be there for future generations. Dad pushed back from the table. I need to talk to my attorney about this. You should have them review the trust documents thoroughly. Everything is legal and ironclad. Grandma and Grandpa used the best estate attorneys in the state. After Dad left, the remaining family members looked at me with a mixture of awe, resentment, and curiosity. Uncle Tom spoke up. Can I ask you something? Why didn't you say anything before? Why let it get to this point? I tried. I sent Dad the email. I mentioned the trust activation at Thanksgiving. I even told Sarah last month that she should wait before making plans for the beach house. Nobody listened because nobody wanted to hear anything that complicated their plans. But you knew this would embarrass Sarah, Aunt Diane said gently. Sarah embarrassed herself by counting on something before confirming it was actually hers. I'm not responsible for managing her expectations. She's a 26-year-old adult with an MBA. She should know better than to assume ownership of a multi-million-dollar property without seeing actual title documents. Chris was looking at his phone now. The beach house rental income is $8,000 a month peak season. Off-season, it's closer to $5,000. Annual average is about $75,000 after expenses, and you're just going to keep renting it out. That's what it's for. It's an investment property. When family wants to use it, they book it, and the rental income is paused for that period. But yes, when it's not being used by family, it generates income for the trust. That sounds fair, Chris said. It's what Grandma and Grandpa wanted. The houses should be used properly, not as free vacation spots. My phone buzzed. The manager texted, security codes updated, bookings fine. Need guidance on the beach house. I replied, keep it on rental schedule. Family pays standard rate. No exceptions. At brunch, some relatives whispered I was right, that Grandma and Grandpa would be proud. But Sarah's hurt voice and Mom's sad eyes stayed with me as I drove back to my small townhouse, the one I bought myself. That evening, Dad called. My lawyer says you're right. I can't contest it. I know. Sarah won't speak to me. She says I embarrassed her. You made a promise you couldn't keep. Mom thinks you planned this to shame us. I warned you. You ignored me. I didn't think you had this power. I saw you as the kid with a $500 check. And now I see you're the one they trusted more than me. They loved you, Dad. But they wanted someone who could protect, not waste. So what happens? I run the properties by the rules. Anyone can book if they follow them. And Sarah, she can book the beach house like everyone else. She'll never forgive you. Maybe not, but I'm here to honor Grandma and Grandpa, not win approval. Dad was silent, then asked, what else did Grandma's letter say? That this would be hard, that family would resist, that I must protect the legacy and stand firm. She was right about you, Dad said softly. Later, I reread her last letter. Don't give in to guilt. We built this as a legacy, not to waste. You are the keeper. Stand firm. I stood firm. Sarah got nothing. I got the empire. And I knew Grandma was smiling.